Don't be dramatic, Nat. It was for your brother. Eric needed help, and we knew you'd understand eventually, my mom said. We just wanted to give him a good wedding, and using your money is not bad. We are family. My name is Natalie, and this is how my parents almost ruined my life unapologetically. Before I continued telling this story, let me know in the comment section if you have ever experienced such family betrayal. The bank manager wouldn't meet my eyes. That should have been my first clue something was catastrophically wrong. I stood at the counter, paperwork for my dream home clutched in sweating hands, watching her type and retype my account number like she was hoping it would magically change. Ms. Patterson, she finally said, her voice thin and apologetic. I'm showing a complete withdrawal on your savings account. The balance is $14.32. The floor tilted beneath me. My ears rang with a high-pitched hum that drowned out everything else. $82,000. 6 years of 70-hour work weeks, skipped vacations, ramen dinners, and second-hand clothes. Gone. That's impossible, I whispered. I'm the only one with access. She turned her monitor toward me. The withdrawal date glared back, 3 days ago. The authorization signature looked like mine, but the handwriting wavered in ways mine never did. My parents' names appeared as co-signers, a detail I'd forgotten from when I opened the account at 17. My hands went numb. The real estate contract slipped from my fingers and scattered across the polished floor. My dream home, the craftsman cottage with the wraparound porch I'd visited every Sunday for months, evaporated in that single moment. I drove to my parents' house on autopilot, running 2 red lights without noticing. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought they might crack. The modest ranch house where I grew up looked different now, almost sinister under the afternoon sun. Caroline, my mother, opened the door wearing her favorite apron, the one with embroidered sunflowers. Her smile collapsed when she saw my face. Natalie, honey, what's wrong? Where's my money? My voice came out flat and cold, unrecognizable even to myself. Her eyes flickered to the side. Guilt. Pure, undeniable guilt. Come inside. Let's talk about this calmly. There's nothing calm about theft. I pushed past her into the living room where my father Henry sat reading the newspaper. He folded it slowly, avoiding my gaze. Caroline's expression shifted from apologetic to defensive in the span of a heartbeat. Don't be dramatic, Nat. It was for your brother. Eric needed help, and we knew you'd understand eventually. The words hit me like a physical blow. Understand? You stole $82,000 from me. We borrowed, she corrected, her tone sharpening. There's a difference. Family helps family. Eric appeared from the kitchen, his fiancée Vanessa trailing behind him with a champagne glass in hand. They both looked freshly tanned, probably from their pre-wedding trip to Cancun that I'd seen plastered all over social media. Oh, Nat's here, Eric said, not quite meeting my eyes. Mom told you about the loan, right? Loan? I laughed, a harsh sound that scared even me. A loan requires asking permission and signing paperwork. You stole from me. Vanessa stepped forward, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. It was massive, easily 3 carats. Your brother is starting a family. Surely you can be happy for him. The wedding is going to be absolutely incredible. We've got ice sculptures, a live band, and funded by my life savings. I cut her off. My voice broke on the last word, and I hated myself for it. That money was for my house. 6 years of work. Caroline's mask of patience cracked, revealing something uglier underneath. You're being selfish. Eric needs this for his future. You're fine. You have a good job and no responsibilities. You'll save again. The casual dismissal of my sacrifice felt like acid in my veins. I'm fine? You destroyed my future and you think I'm fine? Henry finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Your mother thought it was the right thing. I looked at my father, really looked at him, searching for any sign of the man who used to take me fishing on Saturday mornings, who taught me to change a tire and balance a checkbook. And what did you think, Dad? He opened his mouth, closed it, then stared down at his hands. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. He'd chosen complicity over integrity, and we both knew it. Caroline stepped between us, her chin raised defiantly. We're your parents. We made this decision because Eric's wedding is important. When you have children, you'll understand that sometimes you have to make hard choices. Hard choices? I repeated, my voice rising despite my best efforts. You made it easy by stealing from me instead of asking. You knew I would have said no. Exactly, she snapped. You would have been stubborn about it, just like you're being now. Eric is getting married. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. So was buying my first home, I shot back. But I guess that doesn't matter because I'm just Natalie. The reliable one. The one who'll always be there to clean up everyone else's mess. Memories crashed over me like waves, each one more bitter than the last. When Dad lost his job 3 years ago, who worked double shifts to help with their mortgage? Me. When Eric wrecked his car and couldn't afford the repairs, who covered it? Me. When Caroline needed surgery and their insurance didn't cover everything, who quietly paid the difference? Me. I'd been the family safety net for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone catch me when I fell. Every holiday I'd worked instead of celebrating. Every vacation I'd skipped to save money. Every worn-out pair of shoes I'd glued back together instead of replacing. The cottage I'd fallen in love with had a reading nook with built-in shelves and a kitchen with morning sunlight that painted everything gold. I'd imagined my life there, finally having something that was mine. A space where I could breathe without owing anyone anything. Do you even remember the last time I asked you for help? I asked quietly. Caroline frowned. Of course we remember. You're always so independent. I asked you to co-sign my apartment lease 6 years ago when I was building my credit. You said no because Eric might need you to co-sign his car loan. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly. At work the next day, I moved through my tasks like a ghost. I managed the rehabilitation center's administrative office, handling everything from patient records to insurance claims. The work usually grounded me, but today my hands shook every time I opened a file. Malcolm, my coworker and the closest thing I had to a friend there, noticed immediately. You look like you haven't slept in a week. Just tired, I lied, stapling papers with more force than necessary. Busy weekend. He leaned against my desk, his expression skeptical. Natalie, I've worked with you for 4 years. You don't do just tired. What happened? I couldn't say it out loud. Saying it would make it real, would force me to confront the massive hole where my future used to be. Family stuff. Nothing I can't handle. You're allowed to not be okay sometimes, he said gently. You know that, right? The kindness in his voice almost broke me. I nodded quickly and turned back to my computer screen, blinking away the tears that threatened to spill. The spreadsheet in front of me blurred into meaningless numbers. That night, I made the mistake of checking social media. Eric's Instagram was a highlight reel of excess. Designer suits being fitted. A photo of the wedding venue, an upscale resort with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. Videos of Vanessa showing off her bridal shower gifts, squealing over luxury luggage sets and high-end appliances. The comments were full of congratulations and heart emojis. His friends called him lucky, successful, blessed. Not one of them knew the real cost. Not one of them would ever know that his fairy tale wedding was built on his sister's shattered dreams. I clicked on an album labeled Honeymoon Planning. $15,000 for 2 weeks in the Maldives. Private villa. Infinity pool. Spa packages. The cost of his vacation exceeded my annual grocery budget. My phone buzzed. A text from Eric, Mom says you're upset. Come on, sis. Don't make this weird. It's my wedding. I stared at those words until they stopped making sense. Don't make this weird. As if I was the problem. As if my anger was an inconvenience rather than a justified response to theft. I turned off my phone and sat in the dark. Caroline called the next morning while I was getting ready for work. I almost didn't answer, but some masochistic part of me wanted to hear what possible justification she could offer. Natalie, you need to get over this. No greeting, no apology, just a command. People are starting to ask questions. Eric's fiancé's mother wants to know why you're not helping with the wedding planning. Maybe because I'm too busy figuring out how to rebuild my life after you destroyed it. Don't be so dramatic. You act like we murdered someone. It's money. You'll make more. The casual dismissal ignited something in me. If it's just money, why don't you pay me back? Right now. Transfer it back into my account. Silence. Then, we can't. It's already been spent. The venue deposit alone was $25,000. The dress, the catering, the photographer, it adds up. You spent my entire life savings in 3 weeks? Eric deserves a nice wedding, she said, her voice taking on that self-righteous tone I'd grown to hate. You're being selfish. When you get married, we'll help you too. I'm 32 years old, Mom. I don't need a wedding fund. I needed a house. I needed stability. I needed my own family to not betray me. That's enough, she snapped. Don't embarrass us at the wedding. If you can't be happy for your brother, at least pretend. I hung up without responding. The silence that followed felt like freedom and devastation in equal measure. The weeks blurred together. I opened a new bank account at a different institution, one where my parents' names appeared nowhere on the paperwork. My savings balance mocked me with its emptiness, but at least it was protected now. I stopped answering calls from anyone with my last name. When Dad tried to stop by my apartment, I pretended I wasn't home, sitting in the dark until his knock faded away. Caroline sent increasingly aggressive texts that I deleted without reading. At work, I threw myself into projects with manic focus. I reorganized the entire filing system, updated protocols, and volunteered for every available shift. Malcolm watched with growing concern but respected my silence. The wedding invitations arrived. Cream cardstock with gold lettering, announcing Eric and Vanessa's celebration of eternal love. The venue address confirmed my suspicions. The resort charged $1,500 per plate minimum. My money was funding a party for 200 guests, most of whom I'd never met. I threw the invitation in the trash, then retrieved it and tucked it in a drawer. Evidence. Proof that this actually happened, that I hadn't imagined this betrayal. My landlord asked about my house hunting progress. I invented a story about deciding to wait for better interest rates. The lie tasted bitter, but it was easier than the truth. Eric showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday evening, letting himself in with the spare key I'd forgotten he had. I made a mental note to change the locks as he settled onto my couch like he owned the place. Nat, come on. We need to talk. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight and avoiding eye contact. Good. He should be uncomfortable. You can leave the key on the counter on your way out. Mom's worried about you. We all are. You're acting like we committed some terrible crime. I turned to face him fully, arms crossed. You stole $82,000 from me. In most states, that's a felony. He had the audacity to look offended. It was a family matter. We needed help, and you had it. That's what family does. No, Eric. Family asks. Family discusses. Family doesn't forge signatures and drain bank accounts. Look, he said, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I'm starting a business after the honeymoon. Import-export stuff. It's going to be huge. Once it takes off, I'll pay you back with interest. I just need a little more help getting started. The laugh that escaped me was harsh and humorless. You already had mine. Every penny I saved for 6 years. What more could you possibly want? Just some advice. Maybe a small loan to cover startup costs. You're good with money stuff. The answer is no. To everything. Forever. He stood, frustration creasing his features. You're being ridiculous. I'm your brother. And I'm your sister. The one you robbed. Get out of my apartment, Eric. And don't come back. Henry showed up the following weekend, alone for once. He looked older than I remembered, with new lines around his eyes and gray threading through his hair. We sat on my small balcony, the spring air carrying the scent of blooming jasmine from the neighbor's garden. Your mother thought it was the right thing to do, he said after a long silence. It was the same excuse he'd given before, worn smooth with repetition. And what did you think, Dad? I asked again, hoping for a different answer this time. He stared out at the parking lot, his hands clasped between his knees. I thought about how much Eric was struggling. How Vanessa's family was paying for most of the wedding, and your brother felt inadequate. How your mother worried about him constantly. And what about me? Did you think about me at all? His eyes finally met mine, wet and red-rimmed. Every day. I think about you every day. About how we raised you to be strong and independent, and how we punished you for becoming exactly what we wanted. Then why didn't you stop her? Because I'm a coward, he said simply. I've always chosen the path of least resistance. It was easier to let your mother do what she wanted than to stand up for what was right. I'm sorry, Natalie. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. The apology landed hollow, too little and too late. But I saw genuine remorse in his face, and that counted for something microscopic. The job offer came through on a Thursday morning. The administrator of a private rehabilitation center 2 hours north had been courting me for months, offering better pay, full benefits, and a signing bonus. I'd always dismissed it because it meant leaving everything familiar behind. Now, familiar felt like poison. I accepted the position that afternoon. Malcolm congratulated me with a sad smile. I figured you'd be leaving soon. You've got that look people get when they're ready to burn their old life down and start fresh. Is it that obvious? Only to people who've been there, he said. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Whatever happened, you deserve better than whatever's keeping you here. The director of the new center, Mrs. Beaumont, welcomed me with enthusiasm. We're thrilled to have you, Natalie. Your references were glowing. We think you're exactly what this facility needs. I moved through the next 2 weeks in a fog of packing and paperwork. My apartment lease ended conveniently at the end of the month. Caroline called daily, but I let every call go to voicemail. Eric sent a text asking me to reconsider attending the wedding. I blocked his number. Dad helped me load the moving truck, working in heavy silence. As I closed the truck's rear door, he pulled me into an unexpected hug. I hope you find peace, sweetheart. You deserve that. 3 months into my new job, I was standing in Mrs. Beaumont's office discussing expansion plans when my phone rang. Caroline's number. I'd unblocked it weeks ago, curious about what fresh manipulation she might attempt. Natalie. Her voice cracked, thick with tears. You need to come home. We have a situation. I'm at work. Whatever it is can wait. Eric's marriage is falling apart. Vanessa spent all their money. They're drowning in debt. He needs our help. He needs your help. I should have felt sympathy. Instead, I felt nothing. Just a vast, empty space where familial obligation used to live. I'm sure you'll figure something out. Don't you care? He's your brother. His life is imploding. The same way mine did when you stole from me? I kept my voice level, professional. Mrs. Beaumont glanced up from her paperwork, concern flickering across her face. I have to go, Mother. I'm working. Natalie, please. We raised you better than this. You raised me to be a doormat. I'm choosing to be something else. I ended the call and turned my phone face down on the desk. Mrs. Beaumont waited a beat before speaking. Family troubles? Former family troubles, I corrected. They're not my problem anymore. She nodded slowly, understanding in her eyes. Good for you. Too many people let toxic relationships poison their entire lives. It takes courage to walk away. Henry called late one night, his voice barely above a whisper. Natalie, I can't sleep. Haven't slept properly in weeks. Your mother won't admit what we did was wrong. She keeps saying you're being stubborn. I sat up in bed, pulling my knees to my chest. Then why are you calling me, Dad? Because someone needs to acknowledge it. What we did was theft. It was wrong. Eric's struggling now because we taught him that he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. And you're gone because we taught you that your family would always hurt you. The admission hung in the darkness between us. I waited for him to continue. Your mother is planning to ask you for money. She thinks if she waits long enough, you'll soften up and help Eric out of his mess. I wanted to warn you. I couldn't do the right thing before, but maybe I can now. Thanks for the warning, I said carefully. Are you okay? No, he admitted. But I will be. I'm making some changes. Big ones. I just wanted you to know that at least one of your parents sees clearly now. We talked for another hour, carefully navigating around the massive wound in our relationship. It wasn't healing, but maybe it was starting to scab over. When we finally hung up, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Eric's divorce papers became public record 6 months after the wedding. Vanessa filed first, claiming irreconcilable differences and demanding half of everything. The problem was that everything amounted to massive debt. The business venture he'd mentioned never materialized. The credit cards were maxed. The apartment they'd leased together cost $3,000 a month. Caroline called, her voice sharp with accusation. This is your fault. If you'd helped him get established, none of this would have happened. You abandoned your family when they needed you most. The accusation was so absurd it actually made me laugh. Real laughter, not the bitter kind I'd grown accustomed to. Let me get this straight. You stole my money, gave it to Eric for a wedding to a woman who left him 6 months later, and somehow I'm responsible for the aftermath? You could have been there for him. You could have guided him. I was busy rebuilding the life you destroyed. But sure, it's my fault I wasn't available to clean up your mess. She sputtered, searching for another angle of attack. You're heartless. I raised you better. You raised me to be a doormat. I chose to be something else. How's that working out for you? The call ended with her screaming about ungrateful children. I blocked her number again, this time with a sense of finality. Some bridges needed to burn completely before you could move forward. Mrs. Beaumont called me into her office on a crisp autumn morning, nearly a year after I'd started at the center. Natalie, I'll get straight to the point. I'm looking to transition into partial retirement. I want to offer you a partnership stake in the facility. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. A partnership? 20% equity to start, with the option to increase over time. You've transformed this place. Patient satisfaction is up, staff retention is the highest it's been in a decade, and we're finally operating in the black. You've earned this. The numbers she laid out were staggering. The initial investment would be significant, but the potential returns were extraordinary. Everything I'd lost and more, all within reach if I was willing to take the leap. I thought about the cottage I'd wanted, the white picket fence dream that had been stolen from me. This was different. This was bigger. This was building something that couldn't be taken away by someone else's signature on a withdrawal slip. Yes, I said. Absolutely yes. We shook hands, and for the first time in over a year, I felt like I was moving forward instead of just surviving. The investment would drain what little I'd managed to save, but it felt right. This was my future, built on my own terms. Caroline appeared at the rehabilitation center 6 weeks later. The receptionist called my office, confusion in her voice. "There's a woman here claiming to be your mother. Should I send her back?" My stomach tightened. "Give me 5 minutes, then send her to conference room B." I used those 5 minutes to center myself, to remember that I was not the same person who'd stood in that bank a year and a half ago. I had authority here. I had control. She couldn't touch me. Caroline looked smaller than I remembered, her hair grayer and her clothes slightly worn. She clutched her purse like a shield as I entered the conference room and closed the door. "Natalie, you look well. What do you want, mother?" She flinched at the formality. "Eric is drowning. The debt collectors are calling constantly. Vanessa cleaned out their joint account before she left. He's being sued by the business partners who invested in his company. We need your help." "No. You haven't even heard the full situation." "I don't need to. The answer is no. It's always going to be no." Her expression hardened, the mask of maternal concern slipping. "You owe us. We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head. You owe us." I leaned forward, my voice calm and measured. "I owed you nothing beyond what any child owes their parents, respect and love. You destroyed both when you stole from me. You wanted me when it suited your purposes. When Eric needed funding for his fantasy life, I was convenient. Now that you need a bailout, I'm convenient again. But I'm not your backup plan anymore. Please. Eric is talking about bankruptcy. We might lose the house. You needed me when it suited you. You stole from me when it suited you. Now you're facing the consequences. That's not my problem." 2 months later, the envelope arrived at my new apartment, the one I'd purchased outright using my partnership earnings. My name appeared as a co-signer on a business loan for $75,000. Eric's failed import-export venture. My hands shook as I read the notice. Default. Collection proceedings. Damage to credit score. The words blurred together into a nightmare I thought I'd escaped. I called my lawyer immediately. Anthony Weber specialized in financial fraud, and his reputation was bulletproof. "Ms. Patterson, do you remember signing these documents?" "I never signed anything for Eric's business. I haven't spoken to him in over a year." "Then we have a problem. Someone forged your signature, and they did it well enough to fool a bank. This is a felony." The rage that had been simmering for 18 months erupted. "What do I need to do?" "First, we file a police report. Then we get a forensic document examiner. Finally, we pursue both criminal and civil action. This will get ugly, but if you're certain you didn't sign, we'll win." I scheduled an emergency meeting with the bank's fraud department. The loan officer reviewed my case with growing alarm. "These signatures do match our records, but the IP address for the digital authorization traces back to New Mexico. I live in Oregon now. I've never been to that address." They froze Eric's remaining accounts pending investigation. The dominoes were falling, and I felt no guilt at all. The forensic examiner's report was damning. Caroline had forged my digital signature using an old tax document where my signature appeared. She'd scanned it, manipulated it, and inserted it into the loan application. The technical expertise surprised me until I remembered she'd worked in office administration before retiring. Anthony filed criminal charges. The district attorney's office was interested, very interested. This wasn't just fraud, it was identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy. Eric's involvement as the beneficiary made him complicit. Dad called, his voice broken. "Natalie, please. Your mother didn't understand what she was doing. She thought she was helping Eric. She understood perfectly. She forged my signature, used my credit, and put me at risk for someone else's debt. Again. This is a pattern, not a mistake. The police came to the house. Your mother is terrified. Can't we work this out privately? No. I tried private resolution when they stole my savings. Caroline responded by committing fraud. There are consequences now, and I'm not stopping them. Henry was quiet for a long moment. I'm leaving her, Natalie. I can't keep defending her actions. I wanted you to hear it from me first. The announcement should have brought satisfaction, but instead I just felt tired. Where will you go? Violet's offered me her spare room until I figure things out. Your mother's sister, ironically. She always said Caroline had a mean streak. The investigation moved with surprising speed. Eric's business partner, a man named Marcus who'd invested $40,000 of his own money, testified that Caroline had orchestrated everything. She'd convinced him that I was a silent investor, that the family was united behind Eric's venture. She showed me bank statements with your name on them, Marcus told the prosecutor. She said you wanted to help your brother but stay out of the spotlight. I had no reason to doubt her. The community Caroline had carefully cultivated relationships within for decades learned the truth. Church friends stopped calling. The book club she'd belonged to for 20 years dropped her. Former neighbors crossed the street to avoid conversation. Henry filed for separation, then divorce. He moved in with Aunt Violet, sleeping on her pull-out couch and picking up shifts at the hardware store. When I called to check on him, he sounded lighter than he had in years. Your mother tried to convince me this was all a misunderstanding, he said. She actually believes she did nothing wrong. That you're being vindictive and ungrateful. What did you tell her? That she destroyed our family through greed and favoritism, and I should have stopped her years ago. She didn't take it well. Eric filed for bankruptcy. His credit was ruined, his business was dead, and he moved back into Caroline's house, the one that was about to be foreclosed on. The irony was not lost on anyone. Caroline showed up at my apartment unannounced, somehow having discovered my new address. She looked haggard, her hair unwashed and her clothes rumpled. I almost felt pity until I remembered the forged signature. You're destroying us, she said, her voice raw. The police, the lawyers, the investigation, it's too much. Can't we just settle this like adults? We could have settled it like adults 18 months ago if you'd asked permission before stealing from me. We could have settled it like adults before you forged my signature on a fraudulent loan. You made these choices. I'm your mother. You're supposed to honor me. The Bible says. The Bible also says not to steal, I interrupted. You can't pick and choose which commandments apply to you. She tried tears next, the manipulative kind I'd seen her use on Dad countless times. Please, Natalie. I'll lose everything. The house, my reputation, maybe even my freedom. Have mercy. You had mercy when you needed it. When Dad lost his job and I worked doubles to help with the mortgage. When Eric wrecked his car and I covered the repairs. When you needed surgery and I paid the difference. I gave you mercy over and over, and you responded by taking more. This will ruin us. I met her eyes steadily, feeling nothing but cold resolve. You did that the moment you touched my name. Everything that's happening now is the consequence of your own choices. You wanted me when it suited your purposes. Now you're facing a world where I'm not your safety net anymore. The trial date was set for early spring. Anthony prepared meticulously, building an airtight case. Marcus agreed to testify. The bank provided records. The forensic examiner confirmed the forgery beyond any doubt. Eric tried to cut a deal, offering to testify against Caroline in exchange for reduced charges. The prosecutor declined. They had enough evidence to convict both without his cooperation. Dad attended the preliminary hearings, sitting in the back row with Aunt Violet. Afterward, he pulled me aside. Your mother's lawyer is advising her to plead guilty. The evidence is overwhelming. Good. He nodded slowly. I'm proud of you, you know. for standing up for yourself. I should have taught you that years ago instead of teaching you to accept whatever scraps we threw you. You can't change the past, Dad. But you're making better choices now. That counts. We hugged briefly, two people trying to salvage something from the wreckage of a broken family. It wasn't much, but it was honest in a way our relationship had never been before. Caroline's community reputation crumbled completely when the local newspaper covered the case. Local woman charged with identity theft and fraud ran on the front page, complete with her booking photo. The comments section was brutal. The plea deal came through 2 weeks before the trial date. Caroline would plead guilty to felony fraud and identity theft, serve 2 years probation, pay restitution, and perform 500 hours of community service. Eric's bankruptcy proceedings would include a judgment against him for his portion of the fraudulent loan. I sat in the courtroom as she stood before the judge, her lawyer beside her. She looked small and defeated, nothing like the commanding figure who'd ruled our household with guilt and manipulation. Ms. Patterson, the judge said to Caroline, you exploited your daughter's trust and her identity for financial gain. You caused substantial harm to her credit, her financial stability, and her sense of security. Do you understand the seriousness of these crimes? Yes, Your Honor, Caroline whispered. And do you accept responsibility for your actions? A long pause. Then, barely audible, yes. The judge imposed the sentence, including a no-contact order. Caroline couldn't reach out to me for any reason without risking jail time. The relief I felt was overwhelming. Outside the courthouse, Marcus approached me. Thank you for pursuing this. She stole from me too, in a way. I'm sorry you had to go through this with your own family. Me too, I said honestly. But it's over now. Henry chose to stay with Aunt Violet permanently, finding peace in her spare bedroom and part-time work. He sent occasional texts checking in, respecting my boundaries while trying to maintain some connection. Eric disappeared from social media entirely. The last I heard, he was working construction and living in a studio apartment. Vanessa had moved to California and remarried within the year. 2 years passed. My partnership at the rehabilitation center flourished. Mrs. Beaumont retired fully, and I bought out her remaining stake. The facility was mine now, along with all the responsibility and potential that came with it. I started looking at houses again, but this time without the desperate urgency I'd felt before. I wanted to choose the right place, not just any place. The craftsman cottage that had captured my heart years ago came back on the market, the previous buyers having relocated for work. Standing in the same reading nook I'd imagined myself in so long ago felt surreal. The morning light still painted everything gold. The built-in shelves still called out for books. But I was different now, harder, wiser, less willing to accept crumbs. I made an offer that afternoon. It was accepted within hours. The closing date fell on a Friday in late April, exactly 3 years after that devastating day at the bank. I signed the papers with a steady hand, accepting the keys from a realtor who had no idea what this house represented. Congratulations, she said warmly. It's a beautiful home. I hope you'll be very happy here. I will be, I said with certainty. Moving day arrived with perfect spring weather. The moving truck pulled up at 8 in the morning, and by noon most of my belongings were inside. I was arranging furniture in the living room when a car pulled up outside. Caroline and Eric. Together. They walked up the path slowly, uncertainty in every step. I met them at the door, blocking the entrance. Natalie, Caroline started, her voice thin and nervous. We heard you bought a house. We wanted to congratulate you. No contact order, I reminded her. You're violating your probation. Please, just 5 minutes. Eric has something to say. Eric stepped forward, his face drawn and tired. I'm sorry, Nat. For everything. I was spoiled and selfish, and I let Mom convince me that I deserved what was yours. I know an apology doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. I studied them both, These people who'd shaped my childhood and nearly destroyed my adulthood. They looked diminished somehow, smaller than the giants who'd loomed over my life for so long. I appreciate the apology, I said carefully. But it doesn't change anything.